So we're back with the series turning £1,000 into £10,000 by flipping cars. We got these two Subaru Imprezas for £4,000, and in the last episode we started working on the red one, which has a blown engine. Now in the last video we actually pulled the red car inside to fully check over it to see exactly what needed to be done, and we found some rust needed to be fixed as well. But first of all, we actually wanted to see if the paint could come up a lot better, and it does, so it's time to pull the engine out of the car. So our job today is to get the engine fixed and have this Subaru running. So how are we going to do it? Also, we've got to fix some rust as well. So let's stop talking and let's crack on. So we're back with the Subaru, and it's actually been about a week since I've been on the Subaru because I've been really just cracking on with the S14 doing all the welding, and we got an actual friend to come and help us doing the welding on Thursday. So we're going to crack on with the Scuba. We've got a little bit of welding to do with this as well. Now you will see in the last video we actually pulled the engine out the car because it's knocking, or something's gone, something's really badly gone. So we actually drove up to North Doncaster and we got an engine off Dan. Dan sold us an engine for £800. Now, it is a bit of a newer version. It's a newer version engine than the one that we pulled out, but the block is the same. So we need to swap over this intake manifold to this engine. And it's going to be a little bit tricky because there's lots of different connectors, vacuum lines and everything like that. So we need to take a lot of attention when doing this. So I didn't want to rush it. We've ordered some new gaskets. I've ordered turbo gaskets, manifold gaskets, everything like that to swap over to this new engine. Dan actually said he did a timing belt prior as he was going to put this engine into his car, and turns out he didn't need to. So he did a timing belt. He's had the idle pulls on it and stuff like that. He's had a belt done not long ago. All we need to do is change over everything from this engine to this engine. So we need to do that. Now, although the actual shell and the chassis of this car is clean, there isn't any rust underneath. We could probably do some undersealing just to make it look a little bit neater and tidier, but there is a couple of bits that we need to address in the engine bay. One is the battery tray over there. It's starting to get a little bit rotten, and there's actually some holes at the back on that side, so we need to actually fix that, and ideally going to get that done before we get the engine in. And we've also got to do something on the radiator support. That's a little bit rusty as well. First and foremost, we need to start swapping everything over from the old engine to the new engine. Now the turbo that came on the new engine I believe is different. I believe this is a TD04 and the turbo on my old engine is a VF35 I believe. Now we've got an older ECU, so we're going to have to swap the turbos over. So there's definitely a story which I'm not fully getting with this engine, because again, these turbo bolts weren't even tight. They were literally hang tight. So I'm not sure it's been ran like this or someone's tried to fix it and kind of just left it halfway through. Either way, it's not ideal. Now we need to change over this intake manifold, and this holds absolutely everything. All the fuel injectors, all the coil packs, all the wiring, all the vacuum lines, everything that basically controls the engine is held onto this intake manifold. Now the hardest thing when doing something like this is actually remembering where everything goes. That is the hardest thing. Taking stuff off is easy, but putting it back on is a task in itself. So when doing this, I'm not only remembering to take note of everything, I'm actually taking photos of absolutely everything, because there will always be a vacuum line or a wiring plug that you don't know where it goes. Now Dan did say I might have to change over the Coolant Crossover pipes depending on the year, and I am going to have to, because this one has actually got the temperature sensor at the front and that one's got it at the back, and the actual channels are a little bit different as well, so we need to change over the Coolant Crossover pipe as well. But to get full access to the Coolant Crossover pipe and all the lines, I'm actually going to take off the alternator, and while we've got that off, it's easy to take off the power steering pump as well. And whilst I was here, I noticed that the crank position sensor was actually different on the other engine too, so I'm going to take it off this one, and well, I thought it was going to easily go into the other one. Now this, I'm guessing it's a crank sensor. This crank sensor is stuck, and I'm trying to work it around. As you can see, I've already kind of broke the head off. I'm trying to work it around. I have got it moving. You know, I have got it coming out just by getting a flat head and trying to just, you know, knock it up, but it's somewhat split away from the main body. So I don't want this head to crack off and leave the rest of it stuck in that bloody block. Shit, it's not what I want. So the actual sensor's come out, but half of the rubber body is still in there. Now I'm very lucky that this sensor does not really go down into the engine block. It just sits above the timing belt. So we can easily take the timing belt cover off and actually get a good access to this sensor, which is stuck in the engine. Now there's really no nice way to do this, so pick up a hammer and pick up a big screwdriver and just try to break it out of there. Oh, what the fuck? So all of the internals of the sensor are actually come out. Well, what's actually stuck in there is the outer shell of the metal body. Now it's really thin, so I'm just trying to batter it in on itself and hope that it comes out. Little fucker. And finally, after getting that out, we can install the new crank position sensor and we can actually start putting on the timing belt covers as well. And this is good here because we can see how new the timing belt is and all the idlers have been done as well. So that is awesome that it's a job that we don't have to do. I'm really worried about swapping this coolant crossover pipe over because they all felt awful, but one actually snapped in the engine. And I'm not too fussed about this block because obviously it's mainly scrap anyway, and someone will be able to get that out if they really want to reuse the block. But I don't want to be doing that on that engine, and I've just tried to get the bolts out and they are really tight, so I am a little bit terrified. And I don't really want to use heat because there's a lot of stuff around here and I don't want to burn anything or melt anything, so I'm a bit worried. There's 4 bolts holding this coolant crossover pipe in. I've got 2 out. 2 have come out nice. One's already snapped, so that's not ideal. And this one is about to snap. So I'm going to work around and try and get this one out. Now we're going to put a little bit of WD for good measure. I can't say I'm a huge believer in WD-40. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the best thing is when you're dealing with a bolt like this, go loose and then go tight. Go loose and then go tight. And go loose and then go tight, and eventually it'll come out. And I just wish I took my time with that first bolt because I just sent it and it bloody snapped. But it looks like we've got this one. Yes, so we got 3 out of 4, boys. I'm happy with that one. Actually no, I'm gonna have to get that stud out. It doesn't just bolt into the engine, it pushes down on the seal. I'm going to have to get that bolt out. Right, we're getting the big guns out. The big guns are out. So I'm going to get a nut and I'm going to weld this nut to the top of that thread. We've got a bit of thread sticking out, so I'm going to weld that nut to that. And that's going to put quite a lot of heat in it without, you know, moving all over the area and ruining that seal. And it's going to give us something to turn as well, so it should get it out. So just going to fill this top bit with weld and hopefully we can just spin it out. Yeah! Get fucking wrecked, bro! Now, annoyingly, one of the really long bolts actually snapped in the old crossover pipe. So now I'm actually trying the crayon trick. We've all seen this on Instagram where you get it hot and then put a crayon in there and the wax slips down. I've decided to give it a go. Did it work? Not really, no. So don't waste your money on crayons. Now, I did actually manage to break it off away from the head, but the rest of the bolt was stuck in the middle of the coolant crossover pipe. But we did the exact same thing. We welded a nut onto the tiny thread that was showing, and with a mixture of hammering it out and also spinning it, we actually managed to get it out, which is very lucky. So we've got a bit of an issue. These crossover pipes look identical, but they're actually not. The bolt holes are slightly different. The thing is like the crossover pipes are different. See, we've got the heater matrix hose coming off that way. On that one, it comes up here. It might not be the end of the world and I might just be able to use that crossover pipe because that's looking like the only option right now, because the only difference is well, these are on a different side, but we can extend the wiring if it doesn't bolt in, because on the other crossover pipe at the front, it's not a big deal. Again, we can extend the wiring, but the outlet for the heater matrix is in a completely different location. Now I've decided to use the old crossover pipe, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually lay down the inlet and just make sure it actually bolts over, because the height of each crossover is actually different too. Now this has a bit of a longer coolant route, so this comes up here, which would come up here, it's not there, and it goes to the bottom of the throttle body. It goes through the throttle body, through the idle speed control, through the idle control valve, and then out here, which would connect to this pipe here. So basically it would go up here, back to there. Now on this engine, it's over here. So we could extend this all the way around and then up to the throttle body, but it doesn't really matter. What we can basically do is, we don't need coolant through the throttle body valve or through the idle control valve. It doesn't really need to be there. It's more of an emissions thing. We don't really need it. So instead of making all this, all we can do is just put that onto there, and we've just completely blocked off the throttle body and the idle control valve from the coolant loop. And even easier, we don't need to mess around with anything. We'll just go boop. Now this crossover pipe, it's got 2 temp sensors from standard. This one, whereas that one only had 1. So I've took the temp sensor off there and I've put it in here. In my eyes, this is the temp sensor for the dash and this is the temp sensor for the ECU. So I'm not entirely sure why this crossover pipe has 3. But even in this crossover pipe, this was just empty. There was nothing in there. So whether we blank it off or use it, it was hard to find a bolt for that thread. So I've just put that thread in there. The crossover pipe is on. I've put some sealant around the gaskets, and I'm pretty sure I'm good to put the intake manifold on now, and then we've got to figure out all the wiring. I have managed to extend these wires so they'll go to there. There's one plug, I'm not entirely sure where it goes, and it goes around here, but we're going to have to figure out. So let's get the intake manifold on. Now it looks like it all fits, so we can take it off, put our new inlet manifold gaskets on, and we can actually bolt down the new inlet. And now this means we can actually start building up the rest of the engine. So it's putting on the alternator and the power steering pump, and of course we're going to need the actual pulley off the other engine. Okay, it looks like this is a job for another time. Let's move on to something else. Oh my god, I can't believe how long this is taking. This is so long, I can't believe it. So this is the turbo from the version 1. Obviously had a blown engine, so there's probably a load of material still left in the oil channel in here in the oil gallery. So anything that's got oil running through it, we're gonna have to clean out, and one of them is the turbo. So I'm just gonna fill it with brake cleaner for the time being until it runs out, and then we'll just run some oil through it outside the car. Now if we don't get this material out, there is a high chance that it's going to get into the oil and it's going to go through all the bearings and it's going to kill the engine again. So we do want to get all of this broken material, if any, out of all the oil galleries. So after running some brake cleaner through, we're actually just going to get some engine oil, and we're actually just going to pour it into all the oil galleries, tip it upside down, let it run through, and hopefully it's going to pick up all of that crap bearing material that was left in there from the old blown engine. And now we can actually put the turbo, well, the old turbo on the old, on the new, not old, new old engine. We've actually got a full gasket kit as well in my hand. So we've actually got the elbow gasket, we've actually got the downpipe gasket, and we've actually got the oil line gaskets as well. Now the engine is actually not that far away from being put in the car. We've just got to change over the flywheel and the clutch. But before we put the engine in, I need to fix this rust, because it's going to be a pain when the engine's in. Now the worst bit here is the battery tray. You can actually see a hole, so I'm just trying to get all of the crap metal out the way so we can see where we need to cut. Now rust is one of those things that I've been dealing with a lot lately, so I've learned a couple of things, and one is just crack on with it. Don't sit there and faff around. If there's a hole, it looks brown or it feels crap, get a grinder and chop it out. Worry about how you're going to mold it in later on. Now since we've cut that off, you can actually see a couple more holes have appeared, and that is actually on top of the chassis leg. Now people get worried when they hear about chassis rust, but it's the same process. Get a grinder and cut it out. It's only going to be a little bit thicker, which in turn is going to be a lot easier to weld. So we've got 2 holes here now. Now the rest of this looks rotten, but it's actually not. It's just started to surface rust where that's been growing. All this is clean. The underneath to this skin here, that's actually a little bit dirty. So it's solid, it's just a little bit surface rust. So we're going to get a finger sander in there and just clean all that up and coat that. But you can see how thin Subaru metal is and why it rusts so bad. Now we took that patch out here. Look at this metal. Now this is all solid metal. It's just so flimsy. And this is why they rust so easy, because they're just so thin. Subaru metal is renowned for being one of the worst ones as well out of the Jap cars. And, you know, if you've got a Subaru which is good underneath, then be proud of yourself, because it's very, very rare for a Subaru not to have any rust. Because this metal is absolutely awful. What we're going to do is we're going to clean up this here with a finger sander. We're going to put a plate over the top. We're going to come underneath the car, join this inner skin to that plate, and then that's that front wheel, because this is actually the chassis rail here. So we need to do quite a thick plate here. Thick plate at the top, roll it around there, get underneath the car, we'll do a nice big weld to fully seam this chassis rail in. So nice big weld on that side. And then what we can actually do is just put another thin plate in here. This is just a batch of training in the arch, so that it can be quite thin. As you can see, it's quite flexible, where this is a lot more solid. So let's get on it. Now this is a finger sander, and somebody recommended it to me in my last video on the blue Subaru when I was doing all the rust, and thank you to whoever that person was, because it has been unbelievable. The last thing you want to do with metal like this that's already super thin is get a flapping wheel on it. Yes, it'll clean it up super fast, but you're going to take off millimeters of metal, and when you're dealing with the metal that's already super thin, you're just going to end up blowing through it. So a finger sander is a great way to clean off the metal without actually taking away good base material. Now this is the outer skin of the chassis leg, which kind of meets up to the inner arch. Now it is actually good metal, it's just a little bit surface rusty. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the finger sander, we're going to clean all that rust off, and we're going to coat it in zinc primer. Zinc primer is the anti-rust primer, and you can actually weld through it, so it's perfect. So after I've cleaned up all the edges of where I'm going to weld back to bare metal, we're going to cover it in zinc primer and wait for it to dry, and then we can actually weld through it. This is great to stop rust getting into those areas where you can't paint after you've welded. Now I've got loads of sheet metal lying around, which is perfect for when you're doing rust repairs, and I've got so much of it because the S14 has been taking up my life recently. Now doing chassis legs is absolutely easy because it's just a big box section, so it's always going to be a flat plate. So I'm just going to get a piece of paper, and I'm going to keep folding it and folding it until I've got a piece of paper that sits nicely in the gap that I want to weld up. And once you have, take that little piece of paper over to some sheet metal. I'm actually going to be using some 1.5mm, as that's similar to the thickness that I actually ended up cutting out. So 1.5 is going to be absolutely perfect. And you can pop it in there ready to weld it up. Now I actually ended up making another plate for the other section, which is a little bit more difficult as there's bends and curves, so you can get away with using a thinner metal than this, so I went with a 0.8. Now doing something like this is a lot harder as you've got to bend it in to its natural ridges, but I'll show you what I do. So right now I'm just going around and welding that little plate to the chassis leg. The zinc primer is a little bit tougher to weld through than bare metal, but if you get a good quality one, and you will notice the difference to a cheaper zinc primer. So I bought a cheaper zinc primer this time around, and I really did notice the difference, so I'm not going to do that again. Now one thing I learned is to not try and make a perfect plate for what you're trying to weld to. You'll be there all day and it just won't work. So get something similar, and then just be prepared to add little kind of deviations to it as you go along. So right now I'm just getting the top bit flat with where it is and then tacking it in, and then you can actually maneuver it with a hammer and an extension and just work it down into the areas and just go all the way around. So as you can see, there is a gap on the left, and that's absolutely fine because all of the other 3 lines line up well with the body. So we can fill in that little gap on the left afterwards. It's absolutely fine. And as you can see, I ended up just getting another piece of metal. I just quickly cut it with a little bit of scrap that I had left over, and I just filled in that little gap at the side. And once it's all welded, now it is close to a chassis leg, so if you do want it to be MOT worthy, it has to be a continuous weld all the way along. It can't be a stitch weld. So this is what takes time when you're doing something on a road car. But after that, we can grind it all down, make it as smooth as possible, trying not to eat into the base material because it is thin, and then we can cover it and coat it. There is a lot of surface rust in the surrounding areas, so first of all, I'm actually going to get a wire wheel and clean all of this off because I want to seal it and paint it and under seal it all in one unit. So let's clean it all up before we can do that. And after seam sealing all the edges and applying some zinc primer to the whole area, this is what it looks like. So we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to finalise it with some under seal as well. Now the last part of the car that needs some rust is this radiator cradle. People get mistaken for jacking up on here, and it's not a jacking point for the car. People jack up and it cracks the paint, cracks under seal, and it just starts going and going and going. Now it's only bad in the middle here. So I'm going to chop off this first little layer and try and not touch the upper layer, and we might just be able to patch that layer in. Let's get chopping and see how bad it actually is. Well, we're just going to go here and chop that bit off. This bit here, I'm happy to just clean up, but this bit looks horrible. So as per usual, that rust is doing you zero favours being on there, so don't be scared to just chop it all off. I know it's a little bit scary, but you can always fix it. Okay, so that is the bad metal out. Again, it's a little bit rusty here, but it doesn't matter. Look at the metal we're going to be welding to. It's nice and clean. So it did come like this. Now, what we're trying to do here, are we trying to replicate the factory lines? No, we're trying to make the car structurally sound. If replicating the lines of the car was the best way and was structurally sound, why do so many people go tubed front end? Doesn't matter, as long as the car is structurally sound, it is fine. So what are we going to do? We're going to try and just bend this metal back. See how it kind of comes up here? That's quite annoying. So let's try and bend this metal back so we've got a flat piece. And all we're going to do, we can either just put a box section in there, or we can even just put a flat bit diagonally and just join this bit to this bit. Either of those options will be fine. So I'm going to try and pull this straight and see how flat we can actually get it. So I've actually got this old sill, which is actually from the old Subaru. Now this pretty much is a bang on fit. So it sits up in there, and we can actually do it like that. Weld that to that, and then we can just shape the top, cut and shape the top so it joins in along here. So let's use this. Right, so I sprayed this with some zinc primer, so we're waiting for that to dry, and then we can start welding that up. But there's one more thing that we need to address on this Subaru. There was a big power steering leak. In fact, the power steering wasn't even working when I drove it in here, and it was soaking around here, and you can see where it's still been leaking on the floor, and the rack is soaking. But the highest point was here. It was very wet on these lines here. Now, I'm not sure if these are just threaded with like some PTFE tape, or I'm not sure it's almost like a brake line joint, you know, where you've got like a ball and a whatever, you know, tape and a ball, whatever. So first of all, we're just going to just loosen these off and see if there's anything obvious. Hopefully, it might be a case of one of the washers is split, or it is rusty, or there's not even a washer there, or there's a little bit of rust inside, or it could just be the case of that one of them actually isn't that tight. So let's take them off, inspect them, clean them, put them back on, nip them up, and let's see if the problem persists. The only way we're going to find out if there is another problem is when it's actually in the car and we can visibly see where it's coming from after we've cleaned it up. But it's going to be a bit of a pain because the gearbox is right here and the engine's right here, and it's literally right below the turbo. So that's going to be a bit of a pain. So I'm hoping it's going to be obvious now. Right, so this one I'm not sure. This is a set. Well, I'm pretty sure we found our issue, guys. Why is nothing tight on this car? It makes no sense. That literally wasn't even tight. I'm going to take off and give it a clean while we're here anyway, just because it's going to be impossible with the engine in. Let's go and, this must be a 15. Let's go and see if this one's even tight. Is it a 14? Yeah, it's a 14. Right. Let's see. Okay, so that one's tight. That one's tight, which is good. But that's the return. So the high pressure line. So the high pressure is usually the one
I'm not actually quite sure, actually. Usually the high pressure goes at the top, but well, it doesn't really matter. One of them was loose, so let's take them both off, clean them up, and put them back on, and actually put them back tight. And I pray that that is a job which we don't really need to do. What, John? Yeah. Okay, so there's no washer or PTFE tape. It's not just a ball. It is actually like a ball and a taper, almost like a brake line. So I've just cleaned a little bit out there with a bit of brake cleaner. All in there looks pretty clean, to be fair. I might get my hands in just with some like Scotch paper and just give it a bit of a clean. But what we're going to do is there's two little O-rings on the end of it. I'm going to see if we have any spare O-rings. Oh, actually, they look tapered. Okay, the O-rings don't look cracked, so I'm probably going to leave it. What I am going to do is I'm just going to put a little blob of sealant just around the O-ring to help it when it goes back in. The O-rings are absolutely fine, and I don't want to risk putting the wrong O-ring on there, and I can't be asked waiting to get them delivered either. So we're going to go to the wire wheel, just clean up these threads on here, a little blob of sealant on here, dry this out, tighten them up.
Now, using the same technique as earlier, we're going to weld in this new piece to this metal. Now, welding up like this can be a pain in the arse. It always just splatters all over you, and it really hurts when it hits your leg. So we're working away along and using a hammer and extension and just joining the two pieces of metal together and then tacking it until you've got a full piece welded all the way around. And once we've done the underneath, we can actually stand in the engine bay and do the front side of it as well. I know that there was still a little bit of rusty material underneath, but it was just surface rust and it was solid, and we will clean it up with a wire wheel before undersealing it all. And after the same process as earlier, where we seam seal it, zinc prime it, and then underseal it, this is how it came out. Look at that radiator support. It actually almost looks factory. You can barely even tell it's been welded there. And then after undersealing the battery tray, this is what it looks like as well. I actually took my time to do the rest of the car, so I cleaned up all the inner arches, undersealed them, and I actually did the rear chassis legs as well. The car is actually in really good condition, and I'm really surprised how good it's actually coming out at the end. Now, there is a bit of the rear arch missing on this side, which is really annoying. So I've just opened the boot, and I've just wanted to see if it's in there. Now, first of all, I was met with a huge puddle of water because someone had left this in there. Is that actually brake cleaner? No. Someone had left this in there and it had been leaking. So there was an absolute huge puddle of water at the bottom of the boot. So I've just spent 10 minutes getting it out with a wet towel. And there's a load of bags of bits as well. Nothing too interesting. But in there seems to be an ECU. Now this is good because the guy who actually owned this car, he said that he had an engine in here. He put a chipped ECU in, and then shortly after the engine blew up. He put another engine back in and it blew up again. Now what does this say? This says that the chipped ECU is probably not that good and it's probably caused this. Going back to what I said a few videos ago about these engines, just leave them standard or just get a custom safe map. Don't get these flashed ECUs because they're just generic files for generic cars. And if you've got a problem, it will just overboost and overboost until it just blows up. So I hate chipped ECUs and flashed ECUs and stuff. So this is either an ECU or it's a body control module. I'm not entirely sure right now, but we need to have a look at the ECU in the car because if it is some kind of chip one, we need to get rid of it and get stock ECU because I do not want to blow up another engine. Let's have a look at the ECU. I don't actually know if this is the ECU, but I'm sure we're going to find out pretty soon.
Okay, so usually the ECUs are around here. So if it's not tucked up here, it might be underneath the floor. Oh, and what do you believe? J-speed. I don't know what that means, and I know for damn sure that is not a stock ECU, and I know for damn sure this is going in the bin. And it's not even bolted in right. Mate, I don't know who's been touching this car, but they must have an allergy to tightening nuts and bolts. And this looks like a replacement ECU. So we're going to get this out of here ASAP rocketing. And I'm actually going to go and Google what a J-speed ECU is.
So this is a J-speed ECU, and I'm pretty positive that this is the reason why the engine has blown up in this Subaru. These are bad news. Never buy a chipped ECU. Now I've done a little bit of research on J-Speed and I can't find a company which is still going from my quick brief search on Google, but I can find some information about these ECUs from people on the forums. I've only had a quick search. Now the first person on one forum said, I don't know much about these ECUs, it seems interchangeable, but what I can tell you is when it's on, it runs like shit. That's one person about this J-Speed ECU. And I have another forum here, this is from an Evo page, and they're talking about a J-Speed ECU. All I can say is that you won't be able to get it remapped, so it's just a single map. And using it on a car with UK fuel will be asking for trouble. All of these are done to work with JAP 100 octane fuel and will run aggressive timing. So that's just from a quick search, and that backs up my point is that this has ultimately killed the engine. Do not use these. This will 100% be going in the bin. In fact, I've already put the original ECU back on the car. There's one more thing we need to do to swap over from the old engine to the new engine, and that's the clutch and the flywheel. I'm planning on not changing these just because, again, we know how much the parts were. So we do need to check, again, the clutch and the flywheel. I'm hoping that the clutch is in good condition and we can just reuse both. I know everyone's saying, oh, it's probably best just to change it, but if it doesn't need changing, it doesn't need changing. We're just breaking into the budget for no reason, do you know what I mean? But we'll see. If it's like halfway or worse, then we'll change it. But if it's pretty new, then we'll keep it. Oh, nice. We've got an XZ clutch in there as well. Nice XZ clutch with a ton of meat left on it. We are nowhere near the rivets. And look how good the pressure plate is as well. That is awesome. So we're going to reuse the pressure plate and the clutch, which is sick. That is like brand new. Like, look at that. You can tell it's XZ straight away from like the purple kind of colour they use on the sensor plate. That is sick. There is so much left on that. That actually looks almost like a new clutch. So very happy with that. Now let's have a look at the flywheel. Now the flywheel's in much better condition than the blue one as well. You can see where they've got little holes here. First of all, I thought, oh no, that's where it started burning through, but that's just where it's been sat for so long, and it's actually started to show a little bit of surface rust where the rivet is not touching. So amazing. We can reuse this flywheel as well. That's great. We'll give it a bit of a block sound, clean it all up. Also, as well, I actually checked the spark plugs in this new engine, and I'm pretty sure Dan has changed them because they look brand new in there. So we've got new plugs. I'm not going to change the rear main seal either because there's absolute zero sign of leaking. So it wouldn't surprise me if Dan actually changed the rear main seal when he thought he was going to put this engine in his car as well. So I am very, very, very happy with these two results. Gosh, oh! Look at the state of this. Now that is a rear main seal that needs changing. And this isn't. Oh, this is getting good. Now let's take our attention back to that pulley and let's try and get it off. Fuck. Oh my god, that's bent one of my flywheel bolts. Oh no. Fucking bent one of my flywheel bolts. Bollocks. Oh well. I need another set now, so do that again. Fuck, that's tight. We need you, Gaza.
What for?
We need your brute strength.
Not do you now?
I need one of these. Fucking hell.
You need one of them guns.
Jesus
Christ.
Christ.
You need a proper gun.
Fucking hell.
With a socket.
Jesus.
With the right size socket on there.
Fucking hell.
With the right size
Fucking,
socket.
what, fucking scared? Oh, here we go now. Fucking next challenge.
You got to get it up there, haven't you?
Hey, thank you. Hey. What's he saying? Do you want it? I'll have it. Bent my flywheel bolts for nothing. Whoa. Now I just wanted to make sure that the gearbox is going to mount up properly. So I've just checked where the bolts are because I remember when I was saying in the blue Subaru there was way more bolts than this one. There's only like 4 or 5 bolts in this one, where there were 6 in the blue one. So I'm just checking everything is fine. Now the threads are where they need to be, but on this engine there's 2 studs at the bottom and this engine is just one stud at the bottom. So I've got 2 nuts. I'm going to tighten that nut on there, and I'm going to unthread this stud and put this stud in there. So as you can see, there's different mounts. There's only got 1 bolt down here, and there's 2 there. And again, there's only 1 at the top, and there's another one there as well. So it's a very weird setup. And the absolute final thing we need to do before putting the engine back in is that we need to change the steering rat boots, as both of them are cracked. So it's the case of taking off the track rod from the tie rod, and then we have to remove the nut from the inner tie rod, and once that's out the way, we can easily slide off the old boot and slide the new one on. So we've done a lot today. We've got the engine swapped over, ready to go. We've fixed the rust, we've done some other bits as well, we've done the rat boots. Pretty much everything is ticked off my list of things to do. Let me just go on my list of things to do. So all I've got to do is just put on, I need to get some PTFE tape. I might order some on Amazon. Wait, did I order some on Amazon? Can't remember. We need to put some PTFE tape on one of the sensors on the new engine, and then the engine can go back in the next video. We're going to put the engine in and pray it runs. After that, all the jobs are done. I'm good to send it for an MOT, and then it's good to be sold. And then it's good to get sold. So if you are interested in buying this red Subaru off me, please let me know on Instagram. I'm going to be posting it between 5 and 6 grand. Depending on what the market is like. That will be the cheapest GC8 Subaru like this on the internet, you know. These are going for almost 8, 9, 10 grand now. And obviously with the engine we're putting in and all the work I've done, I think 5 or 6 is good enough. But it's also going to be a quick sale. I don't post cars to wait on a month. I like them cheap because I like them to be gone. So 5, 6 grand. I'll double check me on the numbers when you see it post, but I need to go, so I need to get a haircut, so I'm going on holiday in 2 days. So for now, I'll see you in the next video, guys.